The My Ford University Podcast, episode 16. We're going to talk strategic thinking today. We want to stop reacting and start winning. Hello, everyone. Colleagues, welcome to the My Ford University Podcast. I'm George Sloan. Today, we're going to get into a skill that separates the doers from the winners. It's called strategic thinking, part of our thinking series. Again, you would learn a lot of these thinking methodologies in undergraduate college. Strategic thinking you probably would dive deep into in an MBA or PhD program. And we want to focus on strategic thinking today because we want to stop spinning our wheels and start making moves that actually matter. If you're interested in that, you are in the right place. Buckle in. All right. Strategic thinking is not a luxury. It is not a someday skill. It is something that helps you build smarter businesses, grow your career with intent, and make decisions that create long-term wins. And everyone likes to win. So let's dig into what strategic thinking is, why it's powerful, who needs it, when and where you can use it, and most importantly, how to start applying it in your life and in work today. So what is strategic thinking? Strategic thinking is simple in its concept and it's hard in its practice. It is the ability to see the big picture, anticipate future consequences, and make decisions today that move you towards your long-term goals. It's the opposite of reaction. Most people are reactors. We are in a situation here where we're trying to be proactive. We want to look at what the current state is and think about what it's going to take to get to our desired state. And strategy and, of course, tactics that follow all help us to do that. So most people are reactors and they spend their days responding. Responding to what, you might say? Well, they respond to problems, they respond to emails, they respond to meetings, and to whatever pops up. That's all tactical. Strategic thinking is different. I've come across many organizations where they think they have a strategy, but there really isn't one, and they need to ask certain questions. And strategic thinking asks the following questions. Where are we going? Why does it matter? And what's the best way to get there with the resources we have? Again, what's our current state? What is our desired state? And what's it look like to get there? In a situation where, if you want to look at it of tactical thinking is really how we're going to do it. Strategic thinking gets into why, where, and what's next. Okay? So, why does strategic thinking matter? Well, it gives you leverage. It multiplies your effort by making sure that you're putting your time, your energy, and your focus into the right things. How many times have you seen people putting time and effort into the wrong things? You want to stay focused and you want to make sure that you're moving towards your goal, your objective. So here's the problem. Most people don't stop to think strategically because they're stuck in the day-to-day grind. And this is what I was hinting at before. I've worked with corporations where they seem to think they have a strategy, but they don't. And all they do is day-to-day and sort of hope for the best. They're kind of passive. And what we want is to be active. They're reactive. We want to be proactive. So here's the truth. I mean, you can be busy all day and all night and get nowhere. Okay? Strategic thinking, on the other hand, helps you cut through the noise, focus on what really matters, and make smarter decisions. It helps you avoid waste, and it helps you seize opportunities before others see them. Think about that. It's effectively a force multiplier. I mean, you're going to be performing certain functions anyway. You might as well do it strategically and get the most, put the least amount of effort into getting the most results. Correct? That's what you want to do. All right. It's also, when it comes to strategic thinking, one of the key skills that every MBA program is going to teach you, and it is embedded in PhD level research planning because it drives impact at scale. All right. Moving right along. Who should use strategic thinking? Well, everyone. Everyone should, whether it be in your personal or professional life, everyone should. However, let's get more specific. Business owners should have a strategy. And the strategy shouldn't just be to make money. It's how we make money, how we can make more money, and how we can remain relevant going forward. Who else? Team leaders. Team needs to know what direction to go, and strategic thinking helps them do that. Aspiring executives should know how to use strategic thinking. Project managers, I'm one of those, need to know strategic thinking. And of course, career professionals trying to grow with purpose. If you're making decisions, managing people, or building something, strategic thinking belongs in your toolkit. And a lot of what we do here at Myford University is helping you to build your knowledge and skills. And then, of course, we want you to apply it, but you've got to build your toolkit. And again, you do not need to go to college or MBA school or a PhD program to get this stuff. You just need to take a little bit of time and focused attention, and you can develop these skills without hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of your life spent pursuing something. Let's get out into the real world and actually use it. All right. So when do we want to think strategically? You don't need to think strategically 24/7, but you do need to flip on the switch at key moments. My feeling is that you should be looking at this stuff at least quarterly, but maybe even more on a monthly basis. And you might want to break it down. You might want to have a big strategic plan and then smaller ones. It all depends. But here's some ideas as to when to use it, okay? When you're setting goals, whether they be personal or professional, at the start of any project, when things feel off track and you want to get back on track, one of the things that a lot of people always talk about is you need to know your why, and strategic thinking helps you know that. Tongue twister on that one. And you also want to use it before committing big resources. If you're going to make a big investment of time or money, you want to make sure that you've really done some strategic thinking and planning to make sure that you get the most out of that investment. Another thing, when you're facing uncertainty or complexity, who doesn't face uncertainty and complexity? I've talked about VUCA. The world is moving a lot faster. You have volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That's VUCA. We have something on Myford University to help you with understanding that one. But the bottom line is strategic thinking gives you clarity when things get muddy and direction when you're stuck at the crossroads. So where strategic thinking really applies, well, this isn't just a business skill. It applies everywhere. It applies in your business. If you're chasing revenue or you're building a business model that you need leverage and scalability with, you can use it in your career. Are you moving up with purpose or just drifting on to the next title? A great expression I heard, you want to be a meaningful specific instead of a wandering generality. Let that thing sink in for a second. You can also use it in your finances. Are you optimizing for next month or building for financial freedom? These are questions. You got to have a strategy. In your health, your relationships, and your habits, are you reacting to problems or are you designing a system that supports your life the way you want it? And just because you fall off track doesn't mean you can't use strategic planning to get back on track. So wherever there's a challenge, a goal, strategic thinking makes clearer and more achievable those goals and help you get success that you are looking for and get it faster. All right. My favorite part. Let's talk about the how. How do you think strategically? Here's my 5-step process. And this process you'll see mirrors. There's always the same components when you get right down to it. But let's break it down into a simple but repeatable process, okay? Step 1, you want to clarify the real goal. We always want to find out and identify what the real issue is, no matter what we're looking at. You'll see a pattern here with all these thinking methods. So what are you actually trying to accomplish is the number one question you want to start with. Then you want to avoid making decisions about short-term tasks, but you want to focus on the end game. Again, what is your desired state? compared to your current state? Where do you want to go as opposed to where you are? So think about that. One question you might want to ask: what does success look like 6 months or a year or 5 years from now? Again, it should be clearly defined. There may be changes in the course that you take, but at the end of the day, you got to have a direction, and strategic thinking helps you have that. Step number 2 I assess the current situation. Again, remember I mentioned current state. Where are you right now? What's working? What's not working? What's changed in the environment? You got to be brutally honest. Don't sugarcoat it. Again, intellectual honesty. Then you want to scan the environment. This is step number 3. You got to look beyond the bubble. Okay? What's happening in the market, the industry, or the ecosystem that you are part of? I don't want to get too focused on what the other guy is doing, but you shouldn't lose sight of them in your rear view mirror. Okay? So you want to look for trends, risks, shifts, emerging opportunities. I would look for changes in technology, approaches, all sorts of things. Do a full-blown analysis of it. Okay? Then you want to take step number 4. You want to identify your leverage points. Not all actions are equal. Okay? You want to ask yourself some questions here. Again, this is the stage where we're moving from our current state to our desired state. This is the in-between that bridges the gap. So think of this as the bridge. You want to ask yourself, what's the one move that makes everything else easier or irrelevant? And then, of course, the old Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. I'm going to have a post on that at some point as well. What 20% of effort will drive 80% of the results? Again, it's one of these things where it's just there and you got to know it. We'll talk about the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule. Step number 5, you then choose the best strategy. Not every good idea is the right idea, so think about it, think cautiously, and then decide, where do I want to focus? What should I stop doing? And what to invest now for the future payoff? And then you want to execute strategically. If you've done these things correctly, the bridge has been built, you should move from your current state to your desired state. All right, let's talk about a couple real-world examples. We'll ground this in reality a little bit. Say we're looking for business growth. Tactically, you might say, well, we need more marketing. Strategically, you're going to say, which customer segment is the most profitable? Where is the competition weak? Can we dominate the niche instead of going broad? Okay. I am a big believer in getting to know your customer. I am also a big believer in the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule, and I am a big believer in profiling and ranking your customers. And there is a tool, I don't know if I've talked about it yet, but I will in a future post. You want to rank your customers and decide which ones you think are the ideal customer, the 20% of the customers that give you 80% of your sales and or results or your profits. You want to focus on them and get more of them. Then you want to look at the 80% of your customers that only give you 20% of your results, and you want to think about whether you want to lessen your drive towards them, if you want to spin them off or give them to someone else. In many cases, this is a culling process. You want to skim off the best customers and start moving away from the not so good customers. I know it sounds a little cold, but again, we're talking in business and you want to get solid results. So sometimes you need to look at things of, what do I do to get more of the good customers and fewer of the bad customers? And how do I put more attention into the good customers and less into the bad customers? All right, let's do another example. Career advancement. Tactically, you might say, well, I'll just apply for a better job. Strategically, if you're going to do strategic thinking, you're going to say, which roles position me for future growth? What skills compound over time? Who do I need to become? Think about that. Totally different approach. What if you apply for a better job and it's not the right job? It's not helping you in your long-term strategies to get to your long-term goals. Here's another example. Let's talk personal finance. Tactically, you might say, oh, well, I'll just cut spending. Strategically, you might say, how can I increase my income while reducing dependency? What investments create future freedom? I think you get the point here. Strategic thinkers don't just take an action, they take intentional, leveraged, aligned action. Aligned with what? Obviously your goals. That's part of your strategies. Okay? Let me give you another bit of insight into my personal process. When I feel stuck or I feel overwhelmed, I zoom out. I go and look at things. Sometimes you get caught up in the moment because you're too close to things. So you have to step out and zoom away and ask some questions. One of the questions I ask myself is, what's the real objective here? What do I really want to have happen? Another thing I'll ask is, am I solving the right problem or just the loudest problem? Again, use root cause analysis. Make sure you're doing the right thing. You're not dealing with the symptom, but you're dealing with the cause. Another question I ask myself, what can I do now that moves me closer to the big goal? Again, I'm always looking at my current state and what do I have to do to bridge to my desired state? I always avoid using the word assume. As you know, I say I suspect or I conclude because it forces me to reason instead of guessing. I don't like guessing. Sometimes you have to make an educated guess because the circumstances call on it, but you want to eliminate as much of that as possible. You want to make good decisions with the information you have at the current time. Not necessarily going to be 100% right all of the time, but you're going to do the best you can with what you've got. So that kind of clarity is only possible when you step back and you think strategically. All right. Give you a little assignment for yourself. I want to have you try this today. Pick one area of your life, whether it's your business, your job, your finances, your health, a relationship, and ask yourself, what's the long-term goal here? Be honest. Ask yourself where you are now. Remember, current state. What's changing around me? So don't just think about yourself, look externally, okay? Then you want to ask yourself, what's the most strategic next move I can make? You can do this on a back of a napkin, and if you're honest and you take a few minutes and soul search, you'll come up with an answer. I want you to write it down. I want you to sleep on it. And then the next morning, look at it again, and then start building your plan that gets you from here to there. That's how strategic thinking starts, with one smart decision. Hope that helps you. So, most people are trapped in the now. They react, they respond, they repeat. Be a strategic thinker. Strategic thinkers do something different. They zoom out. They ask better questions. Again, my favorite questions are why, and my second favorite one is what if. They also move with intent. Don't get bogged down with analysis paralysis. Look at it, make a decision, and act. You can always iterate, pivot, whatever. It's not always going to be the perfect decision. Just make the decision to start and then make adjustments along the way. And when you do that, you'll win more often because your actions are connected to the bigger picture. So here's my challenge to you. Stop reacting, start thinking, and think strategically. You don't need more hustle. You need more clarity and, of course, more leverage. And strategic thinking helps you with those two. So stop spinning your wheels and start moving forward on purpose and with intent. All right. That's all for this episode of My Ford University podcast. If you want the full article or breakdown on strategic thinking, I recommend that you go to the myforduniversity.com/blog and get the full article. You'll find other thinking methodologies and other little tidbits there. Hope you find it helpful. Would love to hear back from you. If you find that this was helpful, please forward it to a friend. Don't keep me a secret. Share it with someone who needs to stop reacting and start building. Until next time, think big, think sharp, and think ahead. My Ford University. Learn it fast, apply it faster. We will see you the next time.